Welcome to the Illinois Association of Park Districts Parkcast. I'm Wayne Utterback, Director of Communications and Digital Content here at IAPD. And today I'm going to be joined by Forest Preserve District of Will County Deputy Chief David M. Barrios Jr. and Naperville Park District Police Officer Tom Wronski. Thank you so much to both of you for joining me here today.
Thanks, Wayne, for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Wayne.
Now, I'm happy to have both of you joining me today because I heard about this program, Operation Disrupt. One of my coworkers told me about it, and I know that you both are involved in it, and it seemed really inspirational. It seemed like it was something that really benefited the community. So I was hoping that maybe you could just start me with, tell me a little bit about the program just in general, and then maybe tell me how it came about.
So if I could go, Tom. First off, like say Tom spearheaded this for us. He, the Naperville Park District, he reached out to us, local forest preserves on the park district. So we had a meeting, was like November, I think, last year, and with this idea, just they had a couple of teen, young adult suicides in their park districts, and we also had some, throughout the years. And just to get more focused on our officers getting out there and patrolling these areas where someone might go to if they have mental health crisis or feeling suicidal. So he brought to our attention. Like I said, behind me we have one of the signs that we post up in our areas, and pretty much just going from there. It's a simple program to put into effect.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And it was interesting. The Will County Forest Preserve District, Linden Oaks, the city of Naperville, municipal police all really jumped in on this, and since then there have been inquiries from a good number of other communities and agencies. For example, the Illinois State Department of Natural Resources and the Conservation Police have adopted the program. And what's nice about it is that it's not a right when we launched, there was a reporter from the Tribune who wanted to know, well, who's going to pay for all this? Right. Well, there's really not that much to pay for. I mean, we already have officers who do these patrols. Almost any city that has parks has officers who patrol their parks. The signs are of a minimal cost, but the real so it's not something that's difficult, but it's something that involves being purposeful and thoughtful and having officers maybe go the extra step to go down a dark, trail or forest. And do things that maybe are a little bit different than in the past, and may make a difference. And I think that the program does make a difference and will make a difference.
I know ultimately the goal is to help somebody who might be looking to hurt themselves or cause themselves harm. How did you determine how many signs to put up and the location of those signs? How did that all start to come about? How do you make those plans and how do you make them become reality?
Well, I can take it. The first, like the 4 things with Operation Disrupt is first identify locations. So we went back about 15 years, found out where we had suicide attempts and stuff like that. So we kind of judged that because Will County, we have over 23,000 acres spread out. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint a certain area, but our officers out there know certain remote areas where, hey, this might be someplace where someone, you get in their mindset. If I want to do this, where would I go? So we kind of put, assign extra patrols out there or put our signs in those areas just to start. And again, they're like behind me, they're just simple signs. You always move them around. But right now throughout Will County, we have about 10 spread out. So.
And actually, Wayne, it's kind of fascinating. The genesis of the program was a kind of a tragedy. A neighbor of mine in Naperville died by suicide in in an open space, a public park near our home, which really hit home, obviously, for me. And that's what got the idea going. I spoke with our Park District Chief Schindelbeck and Ray McGurry, who was our Park District Executive Director at the time. And both Ray and Steve encouraged research on this. And so we met with Dr. Jerome Hall from Linden Oaks and found out some really interesting things. For example, suicide among young adults. And that's really the demographic that we're mostly looking for here is the 15 to 30-year-olds very often do occur in these public places, but there's a pattern of when they occur, generally at certain times a year, certain days, certain times of night, and certain characteristics of the places where they happen. And so while it seems like you're looking at a whole sea of possibilities, and it would be almost too hard to figure out where these things could go down, the fact of the matter is there's not. You can accurately target. And in addition to that, if you notice, the program is called Operation Disrupt. That's a different thing. It's not Operation Prevent. Deputy Chief Barrios and I are not mental health professionals or psychologists, but our departments have trained us and our officers on crisis intervention training, and also on other training programs that'll help you disrupt a suicide attempt. And you can do that. For example, the young man in my neighborhood who died by suicide, it was actually when the crime scene, because it wasn't a crime scene, but it was a scene that was investigated, determined that he had paced and hung out in this isolated trail for at least an hour before he did what he did to kill himself. Well, that gives a window of opportunity that if there was a patrol car or an officer out on foot during that time period, and the time period in which it happened was a classic. I mean, you could have, that's when they happen, and that's the exact type of location is where they happen. So you actually can disrupt these. And it's interesting, Wayne, a little bit of the coverage that's been in the press emphasizes the signs, and the signs are what people see, right? But the signs aren't the program. The signs are the secondary part of the program, which is essentially a deterrent effect. And the notion is, if you look at a sign, and I could even post one, it's this area patrolled by Naperville Park District Police, and it might be this area patrolled by Will County Forest Preserve District Police. Well, let me see if I can get that shared. Well, I don't know if I can, but that's on purpose. That is, if someone is in a state where they're considering a suicide attempt, then let me get this. The notion is that they can see that this area is being patrolled specifically to stop or disrupt a suicide. That's the key point. And what we're doing is we're instructing our officers to when they approach a person, and we've already had a number of them, to say right up front, this is a special patrol to prevent people from hurting themselves or committing suicide. And actually, as Deputy Chief Barrios is going to tell you in a second, the training is that we've received is really interesting. They don't. I just committed one of the violations, right, Dave? It's not. You don't say, "Are you here to hurt yourself?" You're here to, to attempt suicide. So the science behind this is really interesting, and it's supported by Lyndon Oaks and Edward and this Dr. Call, and it's also data driven. We did the same thing as Will County did. We identified places in our parks where these have happened in the past, or where there have been successful and unsuccessful attempts. And generally, those are the areas that receive extra attention. But we also identified other areas that could be or might likely be, have those characteristics.
Yeah, Tom hit it right on the head. And like I said, that's just like the one of the 4 steps of Operation Disrupt. It's identify the locations, and then after that, you take those locations, assign extra patrols, get officers out there on foot. We do bike patrol, ATV patrol, get out to those remote areas where someone might be able, might be having a mental health crisis, and then provide officers training. And then the 4th thing, which we're doing right now, just publicize it, just put it out there. So it is a big topic around, and you'll see, everyone knows the number now. And now, our signs are kind of out of date, because now they have the text number, they have the 988, they have 211, they have all these other things, which is great, just another resource. And so as long as we train our officers, go out there to recognize the signs, and then be able to provide resources, and ultimately, the main goal is to take someone, if they willing to go and get help, directly take them to a professional. So, and like Tom mentioned, additional training, we took a training through New Lenox, Village New Lenox put on a great free suicide prevention training, and one of their social worker groups put on, they refer to QPR, it's called. So it's kind of like they relate to the CPR. So for us as first responders, or anyone, you do CPR just in that time frame, just to get that person up, to get them the help they need, to the professionals. Like Tom said, we're not the doctors, we're not the social workers, we're just the middleman per se. So this QPR is just like the CPR, just a temporary thing, just to get the person the help they need. The Q, if I could go through it real quick, the Q is the question. Like Tom said, you're gonna ask, you have to be blunt. If someone's out there feeling suicidal, ask those direct questions. Are you gonna kill yourself? Are you gonna harm yourself? And that's how you can kind of judge. And if they say, yes, I am, then you persuade them, by being an active listener, and, you persuade them to stay alive, and then trying to give them the help. And a lot of times, it's a case by case basis. A lot of times, if they're willing to get help, the R in the QPR is to refer them. So right away, the best thing is to physically take them to someone to get them help, or provide resources to them. But again, like, Operation Disrupt, you want to disrupt their thinking at that moment to get them the help, because, in that moment, suicide's not the problem. They have other problems going on. The suicide is the solution to that problem. So pretty much, like, just be human, be out there. I'll listen to some people. Some people just want to, vent and talk it out, and then they're fine. So, but then we have stuff in place. So if someone does need additional support, we could pass it on to professionals.
Now, I'm glad you both brought that up, because that was going to be one of my questions was, it's not just the science. There's so much more that goes into it. They're obviously a great resource for somebody who might be alone somewhere, but it's so important to have that human element, that human interaction, and knowing that you have that support there. Do you hope that by having not only patrols out there, but having these signs out here, that you're addressing something, you're letting people know that, hey, there are support structures in place. You might feel alone, you might feel hopeless, but do you feel like it's added, the signage just adds a little bit more to that push to say, there are people here to help you?
Yeah, I think for the people who do need the help, they'll see that. And also for we have so many trail and preserve users, especially since the pandemic, more people are coming out to our forest preserves and park districts. And if they see that sign too, if they come across someone, not even us, out in that remote area, they'll know, oh, hey, I saw the sign. Here's the number to call if you need help. And they could, maybe reach out to them. Because a lot of times too, people, sometimes when law enforcement gets involved, people get scared and they say, oh, law enforcement, they're gonna arrest me. No, we're here to help you. But if that's coming from another preserve user offering someone help, maybe they might listen to them and take that into consideration and get the help.
That's actually a good point too, because I feel like by creating these signs, by putting them out there, I know this is a topic that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to have it in their mind at all. But do you feel it helps make it a part of a conversation, that it helps address something, that it shines a light on it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's a terrible epidemic right now. I mean, suicide attempts, actually successful suicide attempts, have increased 30% over the last 15 years. And while there was a lull during the initial pandemic, in 2020, there was a substantial jump in 2021, which is what Dr. Call and other professionals who were watching what was going on, it's exactly what they predicted was going to happen. And there's also a certain overlap too to the overdose epidemic too, which they're both along a spectrum of what are referred to as deaths by despair. And a lot of the characteristics are the same. A lot of the places where they happen are the same. We've had officers, and I know in almost any jurisdiction, when they have found people who were in distress of an opioid overdose. Where is it going to be? Well, it's going to be if it's not in a home, it's going to be in an isolated place, often open space, prairie, park district type, forest type situation, and it's the same thing. But it's you mentioned the human touch on the part of the police. One of the reasons why we address people and you try to gain rapport with them and identify right up in front, why am I here? I'm not here to arrest you. I'm not here to check your pockets. I'm here as part of a suicide disruption program, and that's why I'm out on this trail, and that's why I'm engaging you in conversation. Now, you may not be, hopefully, you're not super suicidal, but if you are, if you're in distress, officers in Deputy Chief Barrios' department and mine and others, and the state conservation police are here. And we're here specifically to address that. And that's the reason why we put that up front is we don't want, this isn't ride down a trail and hassle people. This is ride down a trail and help people. And honestly, I got to hand it to the officers who do this. I mean, it's pretty brave to get out and walk down a trail at, 11:30 at night or 1 o'clock in the morning and realize that you might be up to meet somebody who's really at probably the worst possible point in human existence, to be in that state of despair. And any of the training I've done with this and the officers I've talked to, everybody immediately gets it and they say that they're on board to do it, which is kind of different than what the stereotype is these days of police officers. So, and that's, why I'm so proud to be involved in it.
Now, one of the things I was thinking about that I thought was interesting is when you're talking about, somewhere where someone might go to commit suicide. I mean, when you think about parks, you think about forest preserves, you think about the quietness and the peacefulness of it. Is it difficult to have to try and juggle the idea that there are some people who might go there for, committing suicide or things like that? Because I don't think people think about that often. It kind of surprised me when I was reading some of those facts and some of the information I saw out there. Just I never thought about a forest preserve or a park being a place where someone might go to do these things. So how difficult is it to kind of juggle those two different sides of isolation and quietness and peacefulness and how people might use that space for different purposes?
Go ahead, Tom.
No, you go ahead.
I'm just saying, it's like a double-edged sword today because we do have our park district forces. They are beautiful places. We get a lot of compliments and stuff, and people, especially during the pandemic, they said, this is our outlet. I'm stuck inside all day. I don't want to get out there. But then, too, we call it, people's happy places, and a lot of times too, it's it is hard because some people might, or they might go there to commit, suicide or something because they are comfortable. We don't really have the answer to why that happens, but I think mostly just the setting, like you said, every rural area, remote area, they know somewhere, and a lot of times I know Tom could probably, he's the statistic guy, but a lot of suicides occur close to near a trail. It just people want to go far, people want to be found when that happens and stuff like that. So us being out there doing these foot patrols, hopefully we come in contact with this person before that, and get them the help they need.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, for most people, these parks are a wonderful place, and you don't think about this, but they're also they, especially in the demographic that we're looking at, the 15 to 30-year-old who's in a state of despair. This would be a place, and very often the studies show that the person who's going to attempt this has visited that site. They don't wander into a place that they've never been before, which is that's another important reason why we have those signs up there, is that they might get the understanding or the notion that this area is going to be patrolled. And there's a famous study that involved the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's applicable to this. For years and years, the Golden Gate Bridge in California would have suicides. There'd be a suicide every day or every other day. People would go there and jump off the bridge. And there was a debate over the years, well, should we put a National Park Service police officer on the bridge to stop these? And for many years, the authorities said no, because a person who's going to jump off the bridge is going to, well, that person's suicidal. They may go home and do something else, or they may jump in front of a train, or you're not really stopping it. You're just going to have them go somewhere else. And that was the science for many years about it. The fact of the matter is, it's not true at all. There's a thing called idealization that psychologists talk about, where a person who's contemplating a suicide attempt will basically map out a game plan. And that game plan is very, very specific. They don't say, I'm going to attempt to commit suicide one way, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to do another way. They have one plan. And if you can disrupt that plan, even just once, you'll find that it might completely disrupt the whole program. And they've also done, there are multiple studies that people who have attempted suicide unsuccessfully will almost always report that they wish they hadn't, that at that last second, they didn't want to. And one of the things that we found is that the reason why you'll hear of the case of the person who sits in the forest preserve or in the park in an isolated area for an hour before he or she actually does the attempt is because they're trying to decide. It's almost like a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other shoulder, and one of them wins out. But what that means is that that person can be disrupted, that there's maybe the car coming down the aisle, maybe the sign, maybe it's just somebody else rolling along the trail, somebody out with a dog. It's just some small thing to disrupt the attempt will make all the difference. And that's what the program's about.
Now, you'd mentioned that you've heard of some other agencies in the state utilizing this system now. Are they reaching out to you? Are they asking you what you guys were working on and kind of implementing that into their own agencies? How is that working and how are you helping assist with that?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, we have some agencies reach out, and pretty much, like I said, it's something really simple to put into place. Like mostly we give them like the training that we did. You know, Tom made a nice PowerPoint that he presented to us at the time when we decided to go on board with this. A lot of times local police departments, even sheriff's departments, whoever, the DNR, like I'm glad that they got into this right now. It's simple, just training, and like our officers every year have to do mandated training anyways for crisis intervention. So it just additional things, just another additional training, just mostly just for the officers side of it, for get them more how to identify someone who is in need like that. And just going back to Tom's thing with the Golden Gate Bridge, there is a great public speaker, Kevin Hines, was a case where he was on his way to the Golden Gate Bridge to jump off, and on the bus ride there, he was, you know, he was literally upset, he was crying and stuff like that, and he thought in his mind, if someone asked me if am I okay or if I need help, he wouldn't do it. So the whole bus ride onto the route to the Golden Gate Bridge, no one asked him anything. A lot of times people want to stay away from that. They see someone, you know, upset, they're like, I'm not going to mess with that, I'm not going to, you know. And he was, you know, like you said, people they need help and they're trying to, you know, ask for it. And that's what he said. He said, if someone would have told me, hey, do you need help? Can I help you in any way? He wouldn't have done it, but no one did. He jumped, he survived, and now he's a motivational speaker and goes around and talks about stuff like this. So,
Wayne, one of the great things about this program and why IDNR and others are reaching out, and I think that you're going to see this adopted across the state and probably nationally over time, is that there's no organization, there's no president of Operation Disrupt. It's a concept that Dave and I'm sure would help anybody that wants to do. Nobody's getting, there's no non-for-profit that's set up. There's no certification. There's just simply general principles that we recommend. And so if a certain park district, for example, is interested in doing this, we'll help them. I'd be happy to give advice and send them the information. They can work with their local police department. But there's no like mandate. You know, one of the things that in the park world and in the police world, you get mandates, right? So, oh, we want to be a part of this program. Now you've got to send us $5,000 and do it this. You have to do it this way, or we're not going to certify you. There's no certification. These are the general principles. Adopt them to your own area. You know, Dave and I are lucky that we are at departments that are oriented towards this type of work anyways, right? But in a lot of places, in the vast majority of places, a municipal, like a park district or a Parks and Rec department doesn't have its own police department. They work with the local police department. And this is something that could be suggested and put into effect really easily without anyone saying you're doing it wrong. Because what makes sense for us might not make sense for Melrose Park or Oak Lawn or Highland Park. And maybe, and definitely not for like Edwardsville, because they're, well, everyone's different. And so it's easily adaptable. It's something that can be sent out without anyone's egos being bruised or budgets being dented.
All right, well, then that kind of feeds perfectly into my last question. What would you tell an agency in like one sentence about why they should be thinking about utilizing something like Operation Disrupt?
Like we said, like the main part of Operation, it's not the end all to prevent all suicides. We know that's not the case. If someone wants to do it, they're going to ultimately do it. But if we could disrupt that time and get them help, that's, a win for everyone. But just Operation Disrupt is something positive that police departments could do. Just something, and like me and Tom talked about this earlier, like our officers are doing this already, even before this. Our officers are out there for the Park District Force. We're out there, we're patrolling the trails, we're getting out there, we're walking, we're making contacts with people in positive ways before this. This is just a little bit extra training, just for get some identification signs if someone might be in distress and help. And, so on our end, nothing's changed. Like we said, why don't reinvent the wheel? Like even the sign behind me, I just took that from Tom when Naperville did, put our name on it.
There's no trademark on the side.
So,
yeah, I mean, it costs no money to have a trained officer who's already out on patrol taking an extra couple steps. It's a little bit more difficult, for example, if it's a municipal police department and they're less oriented to getting out and going down a trail. And I had a municipal department ask about that. And I said, look, we're not asking them to put on a backpack and go up and down. Just get out and go into these areas where you know that they've occurred before and maybe make an extra effort. But I mean, why do this? This is a terrible epidemic in this country. I mean, this is absolutely awful. And if you scratch the surface, if you talk to people in your community, and I've been making a point of meeting with survivors and family members, you would be absolutely shocked how many people this hurts. And when it goes off in a community, it's like a bomb. Your child's chances of committing suicide or dying by suicide. I'm trying to get rid of the phrase committing suicide because a survivor recently told me, you don't commit a heart attack, you don't commit a stroke. People die by suicide. But if you know someone or your child knows someone who's died by suicide, unfortunately, their chances are much, much higher. It's a psychological contagion, which means that if you had 47,000 people in this country, almost 48,000 who died by suicide last year, that's as many people as died in the whole Vietnam War. It's a lot of people, and we can do something about it. And while Dave and I are not mental health professionals, and neither are most people in the park districts, it's part of our mission for wellness and health of these communities, and we can make a dent in it, and not, and maybe help people. I know help people, not maybe help people. It'll help people.
And this is not just for the Forest Preserve Park District. This is people, these trainings that we do, anyone could take these trainings. They, I see a lot more of these too for the public, because a lot of times, the family won't know how to identify their loved ones. It's nice going over the signs of, how they act differently. And, if they have a history of this before, the family knows more than we do the background on all of this stuff. So it's nice just to get that. I'm glad it's being, more on the media and stuff like that, because it is a serious issue. And then not only for people, but even for our officer wellness training too. So we could relate this all along the board.
The Veterans Administration inquired about this too, because they have it. If you think about it, well, who are soldiers and veterans? Well, very often they're going to be males between the age of 18 and females between the age of 18 and 30. And they have a terrible problem in the military with this, and it occurs on basis. The same programs, the same principles will work. And so they like it. And I think you're going to see it move. But, if again, why? I've never met a person in a park district who didn't like people. Nobody goes into that line of business because they don't want to help people. And as much as over the last few years, people have kind of maligned the police profession, I've never seen somebody who went into the police profession who wasn't interested in her heart or his heart in helping other people. That's why we're here, and this is a way to do that.
Well, I think
this is just
go
another
ahead.
tool in our tool belt. So I know this is just another tool in our tool belt for stuff that we have to deal with in law enforcement in general. So,
well, I thank you both so much for taking time out of your day to talk with me a little bit about Operation Disrupt. If anybody has any questions or if they want to ask anything, what's the best way they might be able to reach out and contact you?
just by our email addresses, which I don't know if you could post that later on
Yeah, I'll put it in the description of the video so people can see that. And if
perfect.
they want to reach out, they can. But yeah, thank you so much for taking time to just talk with me a little bit about this.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot, which I always like when I can talk about subjects with people that maybe we don't talk about often and put a spotlight on it. So thank you so much, Tom, and thank you so much, David. I appreciate your time.
No
Thank you.
problem. Thank you.